didn't write the report. He was allowed to voluntarily debrief, which is obviously a favor, and evidence went missing that he was responsible for. No harm, according to the Justice Department. For all the noise you're hearing about January 6th, that Judicial Watch is actually doing the legitimate investigation on January 6th. I joked on Twitter earlier this week that maybe Judicial Watch should hold its own January 6th hearings. What do you think of that? We just uncovered new documents about the shooting death of Ashli Babbitt that are quite extraordinary, and I encourage you to go to our website and review them directly, because I don't know if I can get them all. You know, I can't obviously discuss every jot and tittle of them, but the documents include, and Judicial Watch's Federal Freedom of Information Act lawsuit forced the release of these documents. They weren't voluntarily disclosed, of the DOJ memo that declined the criminal prosecution for Ashli Babbitt's shooter. And there were some extraordinary revelations in that. The documents reveal that that obviously, as we said before, Byrd refused to provide a statement, but actually was allowed to provide an informal discussion or informal recitation of what went on during a tour of the site with his lawyer. I mean, imagine another police officer involved in this type of shooting getting that type of kid glove treatment. It wouldn't have happened. Now, to go back in time here, or to kind of get the facts out there, Ashli Babbitt was shot as she was crawling through a window by Lieutenant Byrd. And Byrd just popped out, shot her. She wasn't told to stop. Supposedly there was general yelling about get back, but he came out and shot her without warning. She wasn't armed. She wasn't. She didn't have a weapon in her hand. She was crawling through a window. They found subsequently that she had a pocket knife in her pants, but obviously that wasn't a factor in the shooting. So it was a bad shooting. It was an unjustified shooting. And so the DOJ in this memo bends over backwards to try to pretend that what Byrd did was fine, and that his lack of cooperation and the fact that they didn't even bring together a grand jury to investigate this. Why not? This is what the overview and recommendation reads in this declaration memo. This memorandum recommends that the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia decline for criminal prosecution the fatal shooting of Ashli McEntee, and that was her maiden name. The declaration is based on a review of law enforcement and civilian eyewitness accounts, physical evidence, recorded radio communication, cell phone footage, MPD reports, Metropolitan Police Department of D.C., forensic reports, and the autopsy report for Miss McEntee. After a thorough review of the facts and circumstances, there is insufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Byrd violated Miss McEntee's civil rights by willfully using more force than was reasonably necessary, or was not acting in self-defense or the defense of others. Byrd panicked. He shot this woman. He shot blindly into a crowd of people. As Judicial Watch uncovered in other documents and videos, you had other police officers on the other side of the door coming up behind Babbitt when she was shot. And of course, there were other people who were milling about behind Babbitt, those demonstrators, who also could have been killed. Inappropriate. All three service officers, according to the memo, who were around that area, including Byrd, had their service pistols drawn, pointed them in the direction of the barricaded entry doors, and repeatedly instructed the mob to get back. The mob of demonstrators ignored the officers' commands and continued to break the glass on the doors in their attempt to breach the speaker's lobby. Suddenly, Ashli McEntee began to crawl through one of the doors where the glass was already broken out. As she was climbing through the door, Byrd stepped forward from his tactical position towards Miss McEntee and fired one round from his service pistol, striking McEntee in her left shoulder just below the clavicle. Miss McEntee then fell back from the doorway and onto the floor. I tell you, that's something out of the Democratic rump committee. I mean, the Pelosi January 6th committee couldn't have written anything more favorable to the Pelosi police officer who killed an unarmed civilian for no good reason. Now, what's really interesting is Byrd did not create any police reports or documents relating to the incident and did not provide an official statement regarding use of force, though he did, quote, voluntarily debrief and walk through the scene with his lawyer. Now, incredibly, there's a evidence bag that Byrd signed off on that's missing. So this is what we found. He didn't write the report. He was allowed to voluntarily debrief, which is obviously a favor, and evidence went missing that he was responsible for. No harm, according to the Justice Department. And of course, the police department of Nancy Pelosi did nothing about this shooting either. This is what Byrd said, according to the report in his voluntary debrief. Byrd heard glass breaking and saw some of the items used to barricade the doors being pushed down. Lieutenant Byrd continued to tell the rioters to get back, get back. Byrd then saw a rioter with a backpack on start to climb through one of the broken glass doors. Byrd saw the rioter, quote, as a threat, so he stepped forward from his tactical position and fired one round at the rioter. The rioter fell back out of the opening, and Byrd eventually stepped back into the seated area of the speaker's lobby before confirming to other officers that arrived on the scene that he was the one that fired the service weapon. Incredible. No charges, no significant questioning. The fact remains Ashli Babbitt was unarmed. The officers around Byrd saw that she was unarmed. Byrd provided no specific warning to Babbitt. Babbitt did not present a threat to Byrd directly or even indirectly at the time she was killed, and the only homicide that happened on January 6th was the killing of Ashli Babbitt, an unarmed civilian who was a 14-year veteran of our armed forces. And also, which I think is very interesting in this document, there's a use of force history that Byrd had an issue with. Byrd had one prior use of force matter that was originally sustained by the U.S. Capitol Police, but after Lieutenant Byrd appealed, he was found not guilty by the Disciplinary Review Board. Boy, I'd like more details on that. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't the media? Wouldn't Congress? But because Babbitt was of the wrong political class, it's okay. When you look what happened in the prosecution of George Floyd, and when you look at the attacks on the police for shooting individuals and the war on the police, and then you see the left protect Byrd because he shot the right political person unnecessarily, it shows you just how politicized our law enforcement has become and how corrupt the Congress is, that they are allowed their police force to operate with such impunity. Something else that's very interesting is that, and of course wasn't discussed by the January 6th rump operation, is that this declination memos details that Byrd said that due to COVID-19 and other issues, the normal staffing for a joint session was less than half of what Lieutenant Byrd usually had assigned to the House chamber. Think about that. So they had these, due to COVID-19, I'm not sure if they were the restrictions or people were out sick. I don't think there were people out sick. There's no indication of that. But they had half of the people they normally would have had there for security. And of course, if they had better security, they wouldn't have had this unrest. They wouldn't have had this disturbance. because there wasn't enough security, because there wasn't troops, National Guard troops there and things like that, you had the police take actions that, frankly, riled the crowd up, and some in the crowd saw an opportunity to cause trouble. But when you've got the necessary security, riots and disturbances can be mitigated, or frankly, it's just, they don't even begin. So this is big information that Judicial Watch has uncovered. Again, doing more and thorough and honest work than anything the January 6th committee is doing. So the big headlines here are, Lieutenant Byrd was treated with kid gloves by the Justice Department. Evidence in the Ashli Babbitt killing, evidence that Byrd was responsible for, has gone missing. Another side information that came out was that there was a New York Times reporter, and it's unnamed, who was acting as a confidential witness for one of the January 6th prosecutions or investigations. Isn't that interesting? I thought the media was supposed to be neutral on these matters, but they're happy evidently to cooperate with the Justice Department to get one of those January 6 people, right? Incredible. Also, what was very interesting is they gave us a draft press release, which is unusual because typically we don't get draft press releases. We've litigated about whether we should get draft press releases, and the Justice Department's position has been no, you don't get them. But they had talked about in this press release announcing their decision not to prosecute Byrd. In the original, they used the term crowd repeatedly, or group. And throughout there, they deleted and substituted the word mob for crowd and group. Again, showing the politics behind this effort to protect Byrd. And so this is just, again, part of the many January 6 documents that Judicial Watch has been able to uncover, not only on the Babbitt shooting, where we've done more than anyone to uncover the information, but multiple records from the FBI and the National Park Service, but records also from the Park Service, the U.S. Park Service, that showed that the feds and others knew there was going to be a big crowd at the Capitol, and obviously there was not sufficient security. Of course, this is the sort of thing that, an honest congressional investigation would be uncovering, because I was concerned, and we still should be concerned, do they have competent and good security on Capitol Hill? I don't think they do. I don't think the Secret Service gives good security to the White House. I mean, they had the president have to go into a bunker because of the leftist protesters that were threatening to overwhelm security around the White House at one point. I witnessed it firsthand during an event at the White House where they threw the crowd out into the street, where all these leftists were out there yelling and intimidating people. It was terrible. And if that crowd had decided to rush the entrances and the gates, the White House would have been breached. So we've got serious security measures and, or security concerns. And the irony is the left isn't interested in that. What they're interested in doing is they're trying to use this disturbance as an excuse, as I say, to suppress the expression of First Amendment protected speech on election matters. And if it means covering up the death of Ashli Babbitt and minimizing it and not giving her justice, they're willing to do that as well. So I don't care what the Rump Committee is going to do, what Nancy Pelosi Committee is going to do. I do know that Judicial Watch is going to continue with the heavy lifting to expose the full truth as best as we're able under the law about what happened on January 6th, which is as much about not only what happened on January 6th in terms of the disturbance, but the cover-up. For instance, we're in court right now. We're waiting for a ruling from the court about Nancy Pelosi's Congress's refusal to turn over any of the January 6th videos under the government's, the public's right to know about what the government's up to. The common law right of public access to government documents. Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to turn over her Congress 1 second of January 6 videos, one email about what her police and security people were doing. So you've got this unprecedented cover-up, while at the same time, Pelosi and her allies in the Biden Justice Department are seeking to jail people for asserting privileges that are constitutional in refusing to cooperate with that rump committee. So, you know, Judicial Watch, we just don't talk, we act. And our Constitution's under attack, not only from this committee, but from other agencies of the Biden administration, and we're going to do our best to hold them to account and protect the rule of law. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.